Hey everyone, welcome back to Higurashi. Sorry that I am late. I was supposed to be streaming about 30 minutes ago, but I was trying to apply to a new job and it wasn't working and I was getting frustrated. And I was super busy yesterday, so I didn't have time to apply yesterday, and I cry. But, anyways, welcome back to Higurashi. We're gonna start chapter 4 today. And it's going to be with the mod for the first time, which has voice acting and new background CGs and has other things. I think all the sounds are the same because I've updated them to the new sounds. But if someone like who knows the game and the mods better than I do says there's a better preference, I will update to the better preference, I guess. Hi Polly, how are you? Also, I want to say thank you to Soda Aaron, whoever that is, for following me. I think you follow. Yeah, you followed when I was not streaming, so I was not live. But thank you. Shout out to you for following. I'm doing okay. I'm a little tired right now. I've been super freaking busy, but like, I'm trying to hang in there, I guess. Glad you're doing well. I haven't seen you in a while, I don't think. But we're just gonna start and see what the new chapter brings us. That's fair. Yeah, I appreciate the lurk because I need more time-killing chapter. Oh boy. Oh boy. I'm so excited. Even just lurking helps me. I don't know how you kill time, but we're gonna find out, I guess. Uh Even just lurking helps me because like the only thing I need for affiliate is just like a few extra viewers per stream. So even just lurking helps me so much because it's gonna help me reach that threshold. So like lurk all you want. Like if you're busy, like just leave me on in the background, mute my ass. I don't care. Just lurk. Yes. Power to the lurkers, man. Okay. Time-killing chapter. I now entrust you with all the mysteries hidden within Higurashi when they cry. However comical it may be. A comical? Comical. Death and despair and constant struggle and abuse is comical. Okay. If you have reached any conjecture, then you have passed. If you have reached any conjecture? How am I supposed to know what's happening? The final novel is a meager reward for you. Conjecture is impossible. That's fair. Conjecture is impossible. That's how I feel right now. You have the right to reject this story. I don't know if I'm going to accept or reject it, but we're gonna find out. I also still hate the babies. I like the start of chapter 3, right? That was like, this difficulty is the worst. It did feel really bad. These are concluded choices that were added in the console version. These choices result in dialogue changes. I'm gonna skip the choices because I just want to see what happens. Who is the criminal, you ask? Don't we search for them in this story? Who is the criminal, you ask? Do you even know what the criminal did? Who's the criminal? Who is the criminal? Who will kill me now? It's a good question. This is also Rika's chapter, and I'm super excited because Rika is my favorite. Midsummer 1985. And I know she knows a lot of shit, and apparently she's a god. Apparently. Rika is fantastic. I love her so much. She's adorable as hell. I know there's more to her than just little adorable innocent Rika, but damn. I love her so much. I had misread the time and ended up arriving too early. There we go. The schedule board flipped with a series of clacks. My flight to Sapporo was still a bit later on. My brother actually lived in Sapporo for like 3 months, so that's cool. It's the region to the far north of Japan, so it's the coldest region, but... Little side note. I still had over an hour before boarding. Well, I might as well close my eyes for a bit on that bench over there, then. I came here directly from work, so maybe the fatigue from that was making me sleepy. Finding a suitable bench, I put my luggage on the seat next to me and settled down. Oh, who's Akasaka? That's an interesting name. It rolls off the tongue. I sighed like an old man. I had hoped to stay young forever, but had become splendidly middle-aged. Apparently the rumor that even people in the later half of their 20s experience a decline in their physical strength wasn't a lie. It had been mind-numbingly busy at work lately, so I rarely had any time to myself. I feel that, with a burning passion. This might have been the first time I'd been able to enjoy a journey alone like this since I was a student. The reason behind this trip was to meet with an old friend. It was a bit strange to call him an old friend. In fact, it might be better to call him a bad one. Also, this is 1985, so this is like... Most of the events that happened in most of Higurashi happened in 1983, so this is 2 years, like, after. If I am remembering this correctly. After retiring a couple of years ago, he moved to Sapporo, his mother's hometown. His mother passed away soon after, and he was now peacefully enjoying his second lease on life. His name was Corrado Oishi. Oishi, that boy. He was a former detective from the primary investigation unit at the station in Okinomiya Prefecture. To be honest, the only direct contact we had ever had didn't last more than 3 days. After that, we exchanged New Year's cards, but never met again. So this would be the first time meeting him in 7 years. Wow. You're probably better off, to be honest. In other words, we met 7 years ago, in 1978. Something I just had to ask, to talk to him about concerning that time. To explain that it was impossible not to recall the incident that happened back then. The kidnapping, the details and the resolution of which were resigned to darkness. Kidnapping. Also, it was impossible not to recall a certain mysterious girl. My name is Mamoru Akasaka. It was a year that had been strangely hot, even though it was only June. Interesting. Early summer, 1978. I'll never forget it. Oh, that sounded so cute. I love voice acting.
はい、さようなら。車に気をつけるんですよ。お友達の家に寄り道なんかしないように。明日の教科書の準備は必ず寝る前にしておくんですよ。
Clatter, clatter, clatter. Lively sounds of children running towards the hallway.
でさ、つってんだぜ。そんなの俺持ってるわよ。いらねえよ。
Unique high-pitched voice of youth. The energetic shrill of the cicadas went completely unheard by their ears. Children. Where is that car going? Is that a street? Is he coming from the street? This looks like woods. I'm not understanding. Whatever. Children returning home from school split off one by one from their groups of friends as they went through an intersection in the residential area. Apparently I can't click over here. It doesn't work. I don't know why. Even though there were several of them in a group as they left the school, as they got closer to their homes, their numbers dwindled. That's why the fewer friends you were walking home with acted as an indicator that you were that much closer to your destination. Matashita. He finally parted ways with his last friend. Are you stalking this little boy? A van was parked at a bend in the road. The window was open, the sound of the radio leaking outside. It must have been the news or something.
たため、道路交通法違反、公務執行妨害で3名を逮捕しました。一連の日並沢ダム建設反対をめぐる運動は、先月の機動隊との流血事件を境に過激化の一途をたどっており、
This was right after the dam stuff. Okay, that makes sense.
警察では過激な活動家による次の事件を警戒しています。先週も建設省庁舎前での犬飼建設大臣への直訴事件があったばかりで。
The boy's ears perked up at the mention of the name Inukai. The moment a man's face peeked out suddenly from the window of the van. Oh, he's gonna kidnap this boy. Ooh. His behavior was a little different from that of a man looking around to see if there was any incoming traffic before he opened the door of his vehicle. His eyes meeting suddenly with the unfamiliar man, the boy panicked slightly.
ウグイス OK。
ひばり OK。前後2ブロック確保した。いいぞ。
The man in the passenger seat whispered quietly. Nodding in acknowledgement, the man opened the door and stood before the boy. Fucking run, boy!
犬飼俊樹君
While asking that, the man peered at the boy's name tag. Toshiki Inukai. The name was written plainly there. Who's calling? The phone rang for a third time. If he reached out, he could easily pick up the receiver. However, he was concerned that if he picked it up even before it had finished ringing once, whoever was on the other end of the line would think him a fairly cheap person. Cheap person? That's why he normally never picked up the phone until the third ring. Even he thought it was a worthless habit. However, his thinking that there isn't much meaning in waiting for just 3 rings wouldn't wait for 5 be alright was very much a reality. His mind filled with such trifling thoughts, he picked up the phone after the third ring had finished, its reverb dampened by his action.
はい。もしもし。もしもし。
He knew that sometimes due to a malfunction of the switchboard, calls didn't connect well. Those times it was best to hang up and let the person on the other end call again. Thinking that, the moment he began to hang up the phone, he sensed that he was definitely connected after all. He felt the presence of the person on the other end of the line, keeping silent.
もしもし。
There was no way they didn't hear his question. What was the meaning of this? It wasn't like he didn't know that people could use silent calls to harass others. However, he'd never received a call like that until today. Maybe he was just lucky before, but he didn't believe that he would receive such a call on his phone. There were no direct calls to or from this line. Everything had to go through an operator. Therefore, there was absolutely no way the call would be connected unless it was verified there was somebody else on the other end of the line. That way he didn't understand how to deal with this silent call and instead settled into confusion.
あんた、誰だか知らないが、用がないなら切るよ。また、かけ直してください。
Intending that to be a parting line, he made to slam down the receiver. It was at that moment the person on the other end spoke for the first time.
あなたが名乗ってくれないから困ってんですよ。あんたが犬飼大臣じゃないなら、さっさと電話を切ってください。
He couldn't help but be surprised by the extremely strange voice on the other end of the line. Is there a human alive who could speak with this hoarse and metallic voice? There wasn't really voice changers back then. Not like we have nowadays with the internet age. No, this was a voice he had heard somewhere before. This was the kind of voice that was on those lowbrow documentaries that they'd use when they wanted to hide the identity of a speaker, wasn't it? The voice he was hearing over the line was exactly like that.
誰？
だから、それはこっちが聞いてるんですよ。あんた、犬飼大臣じゃないの？
He, Inukai, hesitated to answer. Unable to discern the intent of the suspicious phone call, he had a vague feeling that something was off. He thought about hanging up the phone and asking the operator who initiated the call. However, he forced himself to restrain the urge, for the time being chose to state his name and listen.
そうです。犬飼です。名乗りましたよ。だから、あんたも名乗ってくださいよ。
私の名前なんてどうでもいいんです。まず、あなたがどういう立場に置かれているか、それを認識するところから始めましょう。あなたは今、自分の席で電話をしていますね。では、あなたの席の右側の一番下の引き出しを開けてみてください。
Lowest drawer to the right of the minister's chair. There was a lock on it. Not enough to function as a safe, but nevertheless it was a drawer that contained some valuable things. That's why Inukai thought that the person wanted some of the important information contained within that drawer.
すまんが、開けるつもりはないよ。自分の名前も名乗れんやつの言いなりになる言われはない。
But he has your son.
引き出しを開けてくれないなら、この電話を切ります。きっと後悔することになりますよ。まずは引き出しを開けてから考えてもいいんじゃないですか。
Inukai didn't like following orders from the suspicious person one bit. However, he was concerned about what the man said about regretting it, so he decided to open the drawer. He took the small key he kept stowed in his wallet and unlocked the drawer. His hand stopped right before he opened it. But if there was a bomb inside, it would explode if the drawer was opened. Delusion took hold of him. He quelled the instinct and opened it.
開けてくれましたか？そこにあるものが何かわかりますよね。
これはどういうことだ？おい。
どういうことか説明する必要なんかないですよね。時間を差し上げますので、少しお考えください。また後ほどこちらから連絡いたします。それでは失礼。
おい、待て。もしもし？もしもし？
Call had already ended. That would not change no matter how much he yelled at it. Even still, Inukai, without realizing it, continued yelling into the receiver for a while. The drawer was still open. On top of the folders crammed in the drawer, it lay there. Toshiki Inukai. Written in plain lettering on a grade schooler's name tag, just lying there. Enshrined there, completely out of place as if it were cowering. Interesting. I love this track. Do you remember, Yukie? Who's Yukie? This picture. It's where I first proposed to you. That brief moment before you nodded back, you probably wouldn't know just how much it seemed like an eternity to me. Yes, I would have never thought that the amount of time could feel like an eternity. Compared to how long I had to wait for you to propose to me, it was... From the moment I met you until today, compared to the time I've spent since I was born, might only be a brief period, but they were definitely precious, beautiful days that deserved to be called an eternity. That time continues even now. From now on. I wonder if it'll be a boy, or maybe a girl. Either one is fine. Boy or girl, either way it's living proof that we love each other. If it's a boy, we'll name it after you, Mamoru. If it's a girl, we'll put the Yuki from my name in hers. Thinking about names, it's so fun that in the end we still haven't decided yet. There's still time to puzzle over it. Not that long of a time, actually. You see, Yukie, there's something I have to apologize for today. It's about your job. Sorry. Looks like an annoying bit of work has come up. In the worst case, I might not be able to be there for the delivery. It's fine. You have a very important job. What you do protects the way we live. Compared to you, it's nothing. Please, go ahead. When you return, I'll be waiting here with our child. Thank you. Also, I'm sorry. Please don't apologize. If you feel guilty about it, then you can just atone. If I atone that much, no matter how much money I have, it won't be enough. It's a joke. Now, go on. Who's Yukie? As I left the room, I bumped into an elderly man. It was Yukie's father. In other words, my father-in-law.
お父さん。
Oh, that's Akasaka. Okay, so this is Akasaka's wife.
邪魔する気はなかったからな。廊下で待たせてもらったよ。
What are all these new characters? Like, not only am I still trying to think about all the events that have happened with all the characters I know, but here's all these new characters being thrown at me.
聞き耳を立てるつもりはなかったが、聞こえてしまった。生きたまえ。ユキエはああいう娘だ。何があっても自分が君の枷になることを望むまい。
私はこれまでユキエに様々な犠牲を強いてきました。出産という人生の節目にまで彼女に犠牲を強いることを恥じます。
君が本当にそう思うなら、仕事が終わったらユキエのために時間を割きなさい。君が仕事を投げ出して付き添ってくれるよりも、そうした方がきっとユキエも喜ぶだろう。
ありがとうございます。
君がとても大切な仕事をしていることは私もよく知っている。自分の仕事を誇りに思いなさい。ユキエは君が見事難題を解決して凱旋するのを楽しみにしている。
はい。
I jumped into the taxi that was waiting outside. Compared to the time when I first got here, the numbers on the fare meter had grown considerably. It seemed the modest time Yukie and I spent together wasn't so modest from an objective point of view.
待たせてすみません。やってください。
いえいえ。では参りますよ。
The taxi jerked as it changed gears to accelerate, soon burying the hospital my wife was in behind a throng of buildings. If it was to end up as a really troublesome ordeal, I probably wouldn't be returning for quite some time. To call a rookie like me, and on top of that, who's officially off duty, it seems that the section chief was calling for all hands on deck. A veteran upper brass gathering on an emergency basis happened occasionally. This was the first time, though, that I experienced everybody gathering together like this. Whatever was happening, there was no doubt it was going to be something novel. Right when my wife was ready to give birth. If I wanted to spend the time to curse my fixed fortunes, I'd be here all day. Even the verdant ginkgo trees lining the street that always brightened my mood seemed to lack some of their usual luster. Eventually, the government office came into view. Briefly holding my breath, I let the feelings of tension course through my body once again. Hi, Pred. I had to remember the work I was doing was important, necessary, and difficult. I composed myself and sharpened my wit. Ready. A taxi stopped in front of the building. Kasumigaseki, Tokyo, Metropolitan Police Station Public Safety Division.
全員揃いました。
I did not have much time to read that. Let me make sure. Okay, yeah. I was just checking my Twitch to make sure it was actually playing, like, the right game.
赤坂君、ブラインドを下ろしてくれる？
The blinds were usually closed when they needed to use the projector, or if the discussion was going to contain some particularly disturbing content. The blinds closed with a satisfying sound, darkening the interior of the room. Immediately, the inside of the room was completely drained of the pleasant morning atmosphere, leaving behind only the cold illumination of the fluorescent lighting. After the supervisor ensured that everyone was present, he nodded to the section chief once again. With everybody on the edge of their seats, the chief stood up solemnly and began to give his report.
推定48時間前、建設大臣の孫にあたる建設省幹部の
Oh, the
子息が
grandson.
誘拐された模様です。建設大臣は事態を穏便に済ませるため、警察へ通報せず要求に応じるものと思われます。
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was his grandson or his son, but Either way, that's what I assumed happened. It seemed that approximately 48 hours earlier, the Minister of Construction's grandson, who was also the son of one of his senior staff members, was kidnapped. The reason why it was phrased that way was because the person in question didn't admit it had happened.
在人宅の通話を監視した結果、都外からと思われる不審な電話が数件確認されました。誘拐された子供は病気療養中となっているが、通院の形跡はなく、周辺での目撃例もなく、その他いくつかの理由から事件発生は間違いないものと断定しました。
Here, they admitted the details that brought this incident to light. If you think about it a bit, that meant that before this incident happened, the minister's residence had been under surveillance already. I won't use the words spied upon. Of course, there wouldn't have been the court approval for this, and it would have been very hard to explain to ordinary citizens. However, it was quite an effective method to catch wind of incidents like this before they got worse. I'd like for you to understand that dealing with these cases before they become a problem is the job of the Public Safety Division.
なぜ警察に通報せず要求を鵜呑みに。
大臣たる者が警察を信用できないってんだから世も末だね。
Well, after talking to Oishi, I don't know if I could trust the police either.
犯人グループは誘拐初期に自分たちが大臣の生活をかなり高度に監視していることを警告し、その証拠を示した様子です。大臣が屈服し、警察への通報も思いとどまるほどの何かですね。
警察へ通報してもすぐにわかるぞって。
大臣の近辺に内通者がいる可能性か。
Several of the higher-ranking members who seem to have experience with this kind of thing let out deep sighs.
犯人グループの目的が要求にあるのか、事件そのものにあるのかは不明ですが、いずれにせよ、国益を脅かす事態に発展する可能性が極めて高い。
Their goal was to simply have their demands met for monetary gain. That would have been nice. However, if this was some politically motivated shakeup, things would get a lot more complicated.
被害者の協力がないということは、脅迫内容も要求も一切不明ということか。
本件は内通者の水準がかなり高いと思われるため、当室のみの極秘捜査とします。また本件は本日より最優先事項となり、これまでの通常業務を一時凍結して対応します。よろしいですね。
After that, the supervisor continued on, tactfully explaining our course of action. If this incident were to become public, it was possible that the minister's political life would be over. Spare you the explanation of how the rest of the dominoes would fall, but in the end, support in the Diet would decline, followed by a no-confidence vote and a snap election. Might even expand communist influences. In other words, we wanted to handle this delicately.
川崎と佐伯は大臣宅、子供宅の通話を24時間監視。大臣の動向を探れ。動きがあるたびに逐一報告せよ。残る各職員は担当団体ごとに本件との関連を調査。最近動きが不穏な特殊ラインは集中的にやれ。それから外国勢力も水を漏らすな。
I've experienced one or two unamicable situations before. This, however, was the first time I've seen things get so hectic. Several sophisticated conversations were progressing without the involvement of a rookie like me. I didn't intend to be timid, but I couldn't hide my confusion at this unfamiliar situation.
では、書き打ちに行ってくれ。で、赤坂君は。
I snapped back to alertness upon hearing my name called.
はい。
赤坂君は大臣に陳情してきた環境保護団体関連を調査してくれ。中でも新聞でも騒ぎになってるひなみ沢ダム建設反対の団体をよく調査すること。住民団体の仕業とは到底思えないが、全ての可能性を潰していかなくてはならない。
わかりました。ひなみ沢ダム反対か。
直接現地へ行った方がいいだろう。現地県警で情報を取れ。
Interesting that this is happening in Rika's chapter and not Mion's. Because the Sonozakis were hugely, They were almost the front runners of the against the dam project.
かなり過激な団体らしく、向こうの公安でもマークしてるらしいぞ。
わかりました。現地へ出向します。
奥さん、出産控えてるんだって？こんなタイミングで申し訳ないけど、協力頼むよ。時間がかけられないから、人海戦術で総当たりで行くしかないんだ。
ええ、分かってます。家内も自分の都合が私の仕事に触ることを嫌いますから。
すまん、ありがとう。それから、川崎くん、佐伯くん、君たちの応援には。
I didn't want to take a business trip when my wife was about to give birth. Even if I was a little bit busy, as long as I was in Tokyo, I could head to the hospital right away. On assignment, though, that would be difficult. Even so, I knew the work I was doing was important. Fully understood that I was in no position to be selfish. I have to make it up to my wife for having to be away at such an important time. My wife, Yukie, would probably forgive me with a smile. The only thing she could hate doing was holding me back. My male ego, though, at least wished she would have tried to stop me. Sorry, Yukie. I don't mind it if you always complain to our child that their father couldn't come to the hospital when they were born because he was too busy with work. The next day I took the bullet train to Nagoya, from there transferred to the train to prefecture. Going to my destination by land took several hours. If I was traveling by air in that amount, so I could probably get as far as Hong Kong. This prefecture was by no means close. I never sat in the first class except for work, but whatever I did, the seats seemed stiff. Closing my eyes, I mentally reviewed the documents I read yesterday. Group under investigation, the Onikafuchi Guardians. They were a group of residents opposed to the development proposed under the Hinamizawa Dam project. Local protests were quite heated and we were getting more radicalized. Even limited to what was written in the newspapers, there was bloodshed that occurred during a crash with riot police, interference with the dam construction, too many to count. Number of petitions, sit-ins, and direct appeals to the relevant organizations were innumerable. As an extension of that, there was a direct appeal to the Minister of Construction the other day.
これがそもそも今回この団体を調査することになったゆえんだ。
The land that they lived on was going to be submerged, so it was no wonder they were going into a frenzy over it. Even given that, though, could they really be capable of doing something like kidnapping the Minister of Construction's grandson in order to halt the project? Oh, they'd do fucking anything. Like, have you seen what happens in Hinamizawa? People get murdered. Like, people get kidnapped. People get tortured. People kill themselves. Like, from my take on it, I had serious doubts. Nothing is impossible, as Keiichi states. This kidnapping plot was extremely sophisticated, and complicated enough that it was believed there was some political backing. This wasn't something that we pulled off by a group of local protesters. Well, just like the chief said, the plan was to eliminate all possibilities. While I'm in the police's reference room taking my time investigating, the higher-ups in Tokyo would probably solve the case. Without my involvement entirely. That's what you think. But obviously, we wouldn't be following your point of view if there's nothing important going on. Even if that was true, I couldn't regret being away from Tokyo while my wife was ready to give birth. This was work. There was really nothing that I could do. Yeah, the Japanese are extremely obsessed with work. Like, they are workaholics. The announcement that we would be arriving at our destination soon snapped me back to wakefulness. Gogura Prefectural Public Safety Division.
鬼ヶ淵死守同盟ですか。
ええ、地元ではかなり賑わせているようです。
The Prefectural Public Safety Department already had the documents and a cup of tea ready and waiting for me.
早い話がダム反対の住民運動なんですが、事実上水没地域の住民すべてが決起したと言っていいでしょうね。死守なんて古風な言い方が示す通り、相当の決意と覚悟を持った連中です。 そこら辺の温和な住民団体とは一線を画すと思っていただいた方がいいですね。
The stack of papers they had prepared for me in the document room was by no means thin.
発足当初はごくごく平均的な住民運動だったんです。それがいつだかの流血事件を境に急にヒートアップしまして、今では暴力主義団体かそれに準じるくらいの過激な勢力に成長したと言えますね。
Violent organizations usually indicate ones that enforce their own ideology without regards to the democratic process. Breaking that down, many of those organizations held extreme left revolutionary ideologies. Considering that, I couldn't help but be surprised that a citizens group would end up going this far. Radical citizens movements happen occasionally. It seemed, however, that this group was nothing as trifling as that. It seemed that I would have to reconsider exactly what this Onigafuchi Guardian was.
鬼ヶ淵死守同盟が要求、つまりダム計画の撤回を求めるために行いうる活動範囲はどの程度でしょうか。
The kidnapping of the minister's grandson was classified. That meant, of course, I couldn't tell the prefectural's department about it either.
ご存知の通り、先週あった犬飼建設大臣への直訴事件では逮捕者も出ています。危険性は十分にありますね。
I skimmed over the list of the criminal records related to the Onigafuchi Guardians recorded in the documents. Contents were all violent, not giving me the barest hint of a feeling that these people were trying to uphold the law.
具体的に教えていただけますか。
Chief opened up a vanilla envelope, fished out several unorganized sheets, and spread them out on the desk.
建設現場への襲撃事件が最も多かったですね。初期の頃、電源コードの切断や錠前の鍵穴に石を詰める、投石による事務所の窓ガラス割り等の軽犯罪が頻発していました。
Of course, what really happened first were things like demonstrations, sit-ins, and distribution of pamphlets, lively but democratic forms of protests. However, then the demonstrators and police clashed, which started a riot, leading to numerous injuries and arrests. It was from then on that the Onigafuchi Guardians, like their name implies, began to take more demonic form of resistance.
襲撃が度重なれば地元警察による警備強化がなされるのでは。
それは警戒はしたでしょうね。でもあちらは地元ですから、闇に乗じて忍び込まれたらお手上げでしょう。
Might as well label the entire map of Hinamizawa village around the dam construction site enemy territory. No matter how alert the police were, the locals would just show them exactly how easy it was to sneak around.
警察が警備を固めてからは、むしろ挑発されたように過激化が進みました。ほら、この辺りからだいぶヒートアップしてるのがお分かりになります？
事務所の放火。
An office?
建設重機の破壊工作。破壊？まさか爆弾でも？
いや、まさか。連中ですね。タンクに核砂糖を放り込むんですよ。
Yeah, they did. She did talk about that. Mion did talk about that.
あれやられたらエンジン焦げついちゃいますから。
Even in Japan, it seemed there had been people doing that to the vehicles of occupying forces right after the war. Compared to misdemeanors like breaking windows, it was extremely violent and aggressive.
そこまでやられたら地元警察の面目は丸つぶれですね。
放火はさすがにですね。それで地元警察が24時間体制の人員を大幅に増員しまして、それで建設現場への襲撃は一段落したようです。
He used the words quieted down, but that was still smack dab in the middle of the list of crimes.
で、連中ですね。現場への直接攻撃が難しくなったとしたら、今度は個人攻撃に切り替えました。最初に狙われたのが工事事務所の現場作業者でした。
After that, there was silence. What was being described to me was guerrilla war fought in the jungle. Threats and violence against the workers. Harsh words and harsher rocks were thrown.
かなりの告訴がされているのに逮捕者があまり出ていませんね。
そりゃそうです。第一、目撃者なんかいないんですから。それどころか、現行犯だったにしたってアリバイがポンポンポンとできちゃうんです。
それはどういうことですか？
例えばですね、あなたがひなみ沢で歩いていて、ある男にナイフで刺されたとします。
Ouch.
あなたは相手をよく覚えていて、名前も住所も特定できてるとします。ただし、ナイフには指紋がなく、物的証拠だけがない。まあ、ありがちな傷害事件だと思うでしょ。でも、ひなみ沢じゃ完全犯罪なんです。
Everybody is. The entire village. They're all in on it. To protect the man who was the perpetrator, they get their story straight and prepare an alibi. To that end, they'll probably even forge some evidence.
裁判にもつれ込ますほかないわけですが、何しろ物的証拠はない上、犯人を隠匿する証言だけは後から増えていく。
Yep, that is how Hinamizawa works, that's for sure.
検察も書類送検には二の足を踏むわけです。殺人ならいざ知らず、投石で額を切った、殴られてあざができた程度だと、仮に犯人を特定できたとしても、嫌疑不十分で送検されないことがほとんどです。
Every case is without a doubt perpetrated by someone in Hinamizawa, but they can't identify who. Even if they could figure out who it is, they're unable to obtain enough circumstantial evidence through due process. The villagers were all extremely well informed about this, and so the malicious, vicious, and tenacious personal attacks continued.
被害者はそれでは納得できないでしょう。検察審査会に再審請求を出さないのですか？
それはですね、審査員たちがみんな厄介ごとに巻き込まれたくないと思っているからですよ。ひなみ沢関係のトラブルには首を突っ込みたがらないんです。
Inquest committee is comprised of a random selection of local residents. In the event that the prosecutor fails to get a conviction, they have the power to order a retrial. It's a system designed to assert the will of the people on the actions of expert prosecutors in the legal world. In this case, however, being composed of local residents has backfired.
首を突っ込みたがらない。それはなぜです？
なんて説明すればいいんでしょう。恐れられているって言えばいいのかな。あそこはね、少し特殊なんです。
特殊？何か政治的なバックボーンが存在するということですか？
いえ、そういうのとは少し違うというか、まあ怖がられていると思ってください。この辺りは口では少し説明しにくいんです。ああ、そうだ。わかりやすいのがありました。
Wiping his forehead with a handkerchief, he opened a file labeled as a list of members of the Onikafuchi Guardians.
鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の勢力にはですね、近隣の町々に強い影響力を持つ人間が多々おりまして、この辺をご覧いただけますか？
I looked. What I saw startled me. Prefectural and municipal assembly members, staff members of the Chamber of Commerce, and an executive of a business association, an executive of a town council association, and a PTA liaison. There were more than a few people with a lot to say both locally and in the neighboring regions.
この界隈では、ひなみ沢のダム反対運動は皆静観しているのが普通なんです。ダムを肯定するような発言をすると、どこでどう巡って不利益を被るかわからない。何しろ近隣の町の喉元はひなみ沢出身の人間が抑えていますからね。
検察審査員のリストは非公開でしょう。報復がされないように何らかの措置が取られているはずでは。
一応非公開でプライバシーは守られてますがね。それを管理してるのは沖宮市役所の人間、つまり地元の人間なんです。守秘義務があるとはいえ、やはり人間のつながりは分かりませんからね。ひなみ沢の人間はそのあたりのつながりがことのほか強固ですから。
That's very true. Anytime anything goes on in Hinamizawa, somebody knows about it. And they tell everybody else, and then they work out a plan, and you don't know, like, unless you're in on the plan. It's just crazy how tight the community is. When you consider the obligations and duties people have to the region, the web of information thereby formed is nothing to scoff at. It's not uncommon for housewives in a neighborhood to know which kid from which house and what grade and what school, what subjects they're good at, and what vegetables they hate, among other things.
それにほら、 ひなみ沢と遅延の深い暴力団組織がありましてね。
The Sonozakis.
これが今回の騒動に全面バックアップしてるらしいんです。こちらが出てくるのが一番効いてるみたいですね。
They are a force to be reckoned with, that's for sure.
暴力団ダムの建設反対で住民と一致。どういう利害が一致するのか読みがたいですね。
それは難しいことじゃないです。実はですね、この暴力団の組長がですね、ひなみ沢村の出身なんです。村の重鎮の一人の婿養子にあたりまして。
Exactly what was this Hinamizawa? That's a good question. I had thought it was some desolate rustic village. However, for some reason they exerted a strong influence on the surrounding areas and had a strong sense of unity. They would protect their village by any means necessary, even if that meant resorting to violence. Chief had said they were afraid, because there were numerous influential people living there. But somehow I got the feeling that they were afraid of the village itself. There was something clearly different from what I had read in the documents in Tokyo. This was no simple residential project against the dam. For some reason, an uneasy feeling began to nestle itself at the back of my mind. I chose the most basic way to ask my question. In other words, I directly asked what I wanted to know.
室長、これは例えば仮の話ですが。
はい。
例えば、その鬼ヶ淵主導名がダム計画を頓挫させるため、例えば要人を脅迫するようなことは考えられますか？
Chief replied
あり
immediately.
得るでしょう。事実、彼らは市役所や県庁、建設省の工事事務所にも押しかけ、恫喝まがいのことをしていますし、工事関係者の家族が不審者につけ回されたという事件も起こっています。
Well, that would make sense. To help progress on the dam, they'd raided the construction site, destroying heavy machinery and lighting the construction office on fire. They didn't have any qualms about doing that. Threats and violence against people related to the dam would probably be no problem. But that was it. Even your everyday hoodlum could use threats and violence. However, this time it was the kidnapping of the minister's grandson, an abnormally high-level crime. Not only was pulling off the kidnapping difficult in the first place, but so was maneuvering to have the minister surrender to the demands immediately. This was no way this was the work of amateurs. Did these people have the power to enact this large of a crime? Oh, they can do anything. That was the heart of the matter. Was the Onigafuchi Guardians an organization capable of pulling this off? In order to ask that question, once again, I chose the most basic method.
例えば、政府要人の関係者を誘拐して脅迫なんてことがあり得ると思いますか？
There's no way they could pull off something that big. This was the answer I most hoped for. If it was that answer, my work was as good as halfway done. I might be able to get back in time for my wife to give birth. That was how it was supposed to be. Chief, without a hint of hesitation, replied,
やるかもしれません。
Yep.
そこの知れない連中ですから。
Yep. Sorry, Yukie. Seemed like my work wouldn't end so simply after all. Can't be that easy. This is Hinamizawa. This is Hinamizawa we're talking about. Can't be that easy.
ご苦労さん。担当地域での情報収集はどうですか？
順調です。これから現地警察の公安と接触できることになりましたので、現地へ向かう予定です。東京の調査の方はどうですか？
他の職員も順調に調査を進めているよ。でも調べる団体が星の数だからね。そんなに悠長に時間もかけられないし。
There were no new developments at this time. No matter how suspicious the Onikafuchi Guardians was, if they solved the case in Tokyo, my job was done. Looked like my wishful thinking would come to pass. Hanging up the phone, I let my gaze drift outside the window to the valley of unfamiliar buildings.
赤坂さん、今お貸しできる車が戻ってきました。ご案内しますので、こちらへどうぞ。
あ、すみません。
He showed me to the elevator to the underground parking lot where a battered sedan was waiting for me. The cedar wheel kept drifting to the left was a little concerning, but it would be enough to get me around for a while. My destination was Shishibone City Prefecture, an area under the control of the Onikafuchi Guardians. Okinawa police station was right on the front lines. Cool. Sick. Okinawa Prefecture, Okinawa Police Station. I'm going to save, actually. Usually I wait till the chapter's done, but just in case. Shishibun City was, as far as provincial cities went, rather behind the times. Okinawa, recessed in the mountains, was even more remote. Little change between the seasons, all that was left was the tepid passage of time. It made for a rather drab town. There were no tourist attractions or local delicacies, not even a strong regional industry. It was simply dull. Just looking at the monotonous and peaceful landscape, it was hard to catch a glimpse of the radical resistance of the Onigafuchi Guardians. The atmosphere of boredom didn't hint of the Okinawa police station being on the front lines of the dam conflict, nor of the numerous incidents that I heard about at the prefectural headquarters.
おはようございます。違反金の納付ですか？
いえ、公安部の本田屋さんにアポイントがあります。赤坂とお伝えください。
失礼しました。少々お待ちください。
The clerk, who thought that I was here for a parking violation at first glance, for fumbling with the unfamiliar extension number, told the person on the line they had a visitor.
どうもどうも。赤坂さんでいらっしゃいますか？縁のはるばるお疲れ様でした。こんな部屋で申し訳ありませんね。応接室を押さえてあったんですがね。議員さんが突然お越しになっちゃったんで追い出されちゃいまして。
I would hesitate to call when we were a conference room, as this was very small and cluttered. The cramped space was packed with lockers. I had the impression that it was more of a change room that doubled as one for smoking. Listened to this crude chortles, I didn't get much of a feeling that Hondaya, who was the head of the local public safety division, was much of an intellectual. He's a dumbass. But I knew that in exchange he had both experience and absolute confidence in his instincts.
ご多忙中、突然お邪魔して申し訳ありませんでした。警視庁から参りました。赤坂と申します。よろしくお願いします。
公安部の本田屋です。よろしくよろしく。県警防隊の3階部長から協力を惜しむなと脅されておりますので。
防隊？県警の暴力団対策本部ですか？
うちじゃ鬼ヶ淵支所の連中は暴力団の延長に位置づけてますんでね。あれを善意の住民運動だなんてあんた、東城もいいとこですわ。
They said at the prefectural office, too, that the Onigafuchi Guardians was linked to the local mob. If I recall correctly, the adopted son of somebody influential was a lieutenant in that gang.
そりゃ逆。全然逆ですよ。暴力団の活動があって、それに住民団体が大義名分みたいにくっついていると、そういう風に考えてください。
Sure.
逆。
He laughs a lot. Hondaya was just about rolling with laughter. I don't know why this is funny. This was slightly different than the info given to me at the prefectural office, but somebody embedded locally would be more knowledgeable. While we were talking, occasionally some people who seemed to be detectives would come in and change. One of those individuals, noticing Hondaya's guffaws, however you pronounce it, guffaws? Whatever, came up to us.
何の話をしてるかと思えば
Wow, that character splash art. That is completely different.
おお、クラちゃん。ちょうどよかった。クラちゃんも入ってよ。
I kind of like the ones from the new better.
こちら、はるばる東京の警視庁からお見えになった赤坂警部。
警部だなんて。まだまだ新米です。赤坂です。よろしくお願いします。
初々しいのがいいですね。採用は今年ですか？
I couldn't help but think I was being ridiculed, so I only responded with a forced smile. Oh wait, she has that effect, yes. I could tell this new person was like Hondoya, the type who had confidence in their instincts and experience. Can I change, That's the mod menu. Graphics preset, opening movies, audio preset, art set. I just want the characters from the new one, but I want the voice acting from the old one. Use Manga Gamers remake stripes with console backgrounds. That's what I want, right? Let's see. These are the sprites that I'm used to. It just feels weird to use those ones. I really didn't like those types of people.
赤坂さんにもご紹介します。こちらは刑事部の大石君。赤坂さんがお問い合わせの S 号の件なら彼が詳しいです。
S 号？園崎の S。
I don't know if I like his voice actor.
S 号ってのはですね、園崎家が関連している件を示す、まあ、暗号みたいなもんなんです。
I expected his voice to be a little, like, darker? I don't know how to describe it. Like, a little more, like, I can't think of the word right now, but a little more I can't, what is the word? Like, intimidating, yes. I expected his voice to be a little more intimidating than it is. Sonozaki. Come to think of it, I remember when I was poring over the documents at headquarters, there were quite a few people with the last name Sonozaki popping up.
確か、園崎氏は鬼ヶ淵自主同盟の役員でしたね。確か会計だったと思います。
The two of them were surprised when I rattled off what posts that Sonozaki held. For a moment, both of them erupted into laughter.
赤坂さんでしたっけ？あなたお勉強家さんですね。ひょっとして同盟の連中の主要人物全部暗記してるんじゃ？
暗記というほどではありませんが、一応鬼ヶ淵自主同盟の
Yeah, those, like, I can't not use these sprites now. Like, they're so good. Like, they honestly did a great job with the sprites, but like everything else was just not good in the remake. Like, the backgrounds were just so lackluster, and they didn't have any voice acting, and it was just bad. So I like everything else from the mod, but the new music and the character sprites are good.
じゃあ会長と副会長は？
会長は現ひなみ沢村村長の君吉喜一郎氏。副会長は町会神社部長の古出氏。会計が園崎を領して、会計監査は牧野氏。教頭部長が君吉義郎氏。広報部長が園崎貞夫氏。
赤坂さん、あなたなかなかやりますね。給料安いけどうちに来ません？うちに一番必要で一番いないタイプですよ。で、ちなみに園崎貞夫は青年部長なんです。惜しいですね。広報部長は園崎忠孝。
He laughs so much. Feeling like I wasn't being complimented at all, I started settling into an uncomfortable mood. However, I was becoming more and more aware that I was the weakest link in this investigation, so I just had to bear with it. I didn't mean for that feeling to show up on my face, but the crafty detectives didn't let that slip by.
バカにしたつもりはないんです。お詫びと言っちゃなんですが、なんでしたら村を実際にご案内しましょう。
For somebody with no feel for the area like me, it would be a great help. I couldn't have asked for more.
鬼ヶ淵死守同盟ってのは結局ひなみ沢村の対外的な別称に過ぎません。村を知ることがあなたの仕事の近道だと思いますよ。いかがです？
Residential movement, in other words, held influence over the whole region. So the leader of the movement was the leader of that influence. Just like that, the thought process in the region would become the overall personality of the movement. Just like Oishi had said, in order to learn what they were really like, this regional force behind the dam protests, getting to know the village was the quickest way. Nodding back without skipping a beat, Oishi laughed in satisfaction and stood up. If I took the information I learned at the prefectural office and from Handoya to heart, if my position was exposed, my personal safety was at risk. Ipana was an extremist group that had no qualms about using threats or violence against someone. If my personal info was leaked, it wouldn't be hard to imagine that I'd be in danger, whether on the job or not. Thinking that, I felt a little nervous.
連中は顔を覚えるの早いですからね。私と一緒にいるところを見られると多分いろいろ月並みですがね。こいつを身につけておいてください。
She handed me an incredibly suspicious disguise comprised of a baseball cap, sunglasses, and a mask. I didn't want to get all hot and stuffy, but Oishi's warning was probably right on the money. Considering that, I put them on with appreciation. I looked so suspicious that Oishi had to smile wryly.
どこまで話しましたかね。
御三家という旧家が村を支配しているというところまでです。
The Onikafuchi Guardians was the same as the village of Hinamizawa itself, meaning there was a direct correlation between being an executive in the alliance and being a leader in the village, as Handoya had told me a short time ago. The village was ruled by 3 ancient families, then it would mean the Onikafuchi Guardians was ruled by the same 3 families.
県警の資料には何て書いてありました？死守同盟のリーダー格とかそういうことについて。
Documents I was using were classified. If I responded to Oishi's question, it would be a breach of security. However, most likely, this man, I judged, was more well-versed in the situation than any of the documents at the prefectural police department, so I decided to answer him.
同盟の会長は現村長の君吉喜一郎と。
Oishi, upon hearing that, let out a small chuckle. For him to ask like that, and to laugh at the answer as it was recorded in the documents, meant that wasn't the case in reality.
では、君吉氏以外の影の人物がいる。県警の持つ、いや、一般的な情報とは異なり。
君吉のじいさんなんてただのお飾りですよ。そもそもこの村じゃ村長なんてポスト自体も形式だけなんです。
Yeah, he has like nothing to do with anything.
つまり、同盟も村も本当の意味で支配している別の存在がいる。それが先ほどおっしゃられていた御三家。
まあ、そのあたりはこれからご説明します。
All of a sudden, with a thunk, the car suddenly lurched. The paved road had given way to a gravel one. At the same time, the scenery outside the window changed. The Hinamizawa Dam project must be withdrawn. Overthrow the shameless puppet of a governor. The dam will submerge the natural beauty of Hinamizawa. Protect the village from the unethical dam. Fear the wrath of Oyashiro-sama's curse. Demolish the dam. Those involved must go away. Construction office must respond. Construction office manager must negotiate with us. Signs and banners crowded the roadside. Even reading the brush-scrawled words was daunting. It was as though the road just changed, was a border with a different country. The moment I was startled by the car suddenly braking. Looking ahead, a barricade had been erected. About 5 or 6 protesters wearing masks and helmets tied their faces were blocking the road, yelling at us angrily to stop.
これは何ですか？検問？
はあ？懲りない連中だな。
Oishi snorted as he rolled down the window and leaned out.
おいおいおい。あんたらダメだよ、こんなとこで道を塞いじゃ。
As Oishi glared at them with a malicious laugh, they visibly faltered.
道開けてくださいな。 それじゃ通れないでしょう。
Who would have thought it was Oishi's car? That panic thought seemed to make them lose their presence of mind.
大石刑事の車と分かってればこんなご無礼はしなかったんですがね。大石刑事、いつもの車はどうされました？車検ですか？
そんなところです。台車ってのはどうにも馴染みませんね。
Judging from their brief conversation, I guess they were familiar with the license plate on the car Oishi normally used. In other words, if they knew the car belonged to the police, they would have hidden the barricade. What they were doing was obviously obstruction of traffic. A blatant crime.
そっちの怪しい男は誰です？あんた、顔を見せてくれませんか？
Man glared at me menacingly. Wearing a mask and sunglasses made me look particularly dubious. Would not showing my face get me into some unnecessary trouble? I turned to Oishi to see what I should do.
彼の顔は勘弁してあげてください。まだまだ新米でシャイなんですからね。
不審な輩じゃないか確認しようってだけです。最近のひなみさんは物騒ですからね。
ね。あんたのうち鏡歪んでるのと違います。
Ouch.
あんたのその面の方がよっぽど不審ですよ。な。
The men and Oishi continued to talk like that, feigning smiles at one another. However, from the beginning to the end, I couldn't get over the feeling I was sitting on a powder keg.
ゴミの不法投棄車両まだ減らないんですか？オタクたちも本当に朝晩大変ですね。
警察の方にもご理解とご協力をいただけて助かりますよ。
During that conversation, the barricade was moved, leaving a gap wide enough for a single car to get through. Oishi lightly honked the horn once and began to roll the car forward. I could see the men's antagonistic glances at the back of the car in the rearview mirror.
何ですかさっきのは。
Interesting.
勝手に行動を封殺するなんて。
もちろん犯罪ですよ。目くじら立てても始まりませんがね。連中の主張じゃですね、村内に不法投棄をするトラックが出没するっていうんです。それを封じ込めるために不審車両を検問してるって話だそうで。
不法投棄？産廃を勝手に捨てようとする悪徳業者のことですか？
警察が何の手も打たないから自分たちで自衛するっていう論法でしたね。まあ産廃なんて話はどうせ自演だからどうでもいいんですがね。
自演？
連中うまい作戦なんですよ。ダム現場にですね、工事妨害のために産廃ゴミを自分たちでばらまいてるんです。で、それを悪徳業者のせいってことにして臨検を設置すると。それで工事車両をいちいち足止めしてチクチクと妨害してるってわけなんです。
鬼ヶ淵主同盟の抵抗運動の一つというわけですね。
多分今の検問でこの車のナンバーが割れましたからね。もうこの先には一切検問の真似事はないと思います。連中も私を怒らせると得をしないことだけはよね。この車が工事関係車両だと知れるとですね、散々検問で足止めを食らうばかりか、投石や鉄釘のばらまきなんかも食らうって噂です。あなたも身元が割れないようにせいぜい気をつけた方がいいですよ。公安なんてバレたらどんな目に遭うやら。
Oishi was acting like we were talking about something fun, but for me it was no laughing matter.
なるで、どこぞの内戦の国に迷い込んだような錯覚です。
あんた、そりゃうまい言い方です。今言われたのはまさにその通
り。Oishi turned to me with a grin and menacing laugh.
ここはね、戦争地帯なんですよ。
Car slowed down a bit as it went down a narrow road through some farmland.
あそこの森の中に家があるのが見えます。古い感じの。
Looking where Oishi was pointing, there certainly was an old, traditionally designed house.
あれが村長の君吉のじいさんの家です。君吉本家とも言いますな。分家筋が多いですから、御三家の一つにあたります。
御三家、ひなみ沢村を支配している旧家ですね。
そうそう。で、もう一つが古出家。こっちは分家どころか、もう神主一家しか残ってませんがね。ちょうどあっちの方にね、神社がありまして、そこの神主をしています。ちなみにね、死守同盟の事務所はその神社の敷地内にあります。
The office of the Onagafuji Guardians. If these guys were the enemy, that would make the shrine their stronghold.
そこを見ることはできますか？
神社は古出家の私有地でね、警察といえど令状がないと踏み込めません。電柱のバックには村の息のかかった議員もいますからね。警察にも強いところと弱いところがあるってことです。御三家とは言ってもですね、そりゃあだいぶ大昔のことなんだそうです。大昔はその御三家ってのは合議して村のいろいろなことを決めてたらしいですな。
ということは今は違うということですね。
あんたいちいち察しがいいですね。さすが高学歴。
The car braked to a halt with a squeal. Ahead of where we were stopped were several signs. Get the fuck out. Private property beyond, no trespassing. Beware of poisonous snakes, danger, turn back. Intruders will be charged an entry fee of 1 million yen. Signs were erected there with things like that written on them. The road was separated from the forest by a chain link fence wrapped in barbed wire.
私有地なんでここまでです。この先は監視カメラがいくつも仕掛けられてます。うっかり道に迷いました。なんて論法が通じる相手じゃありませんからね。
この先がそうなんですね。
People currently controlling Hinamizawa and the Onagafuji Guardians were neither the Kimiyoshi family nor the Furude family, but the last of the three.
この先にあるのが御三家の一つ、園崎家。ひなみ沢村を影から支配する連中です。
Among the list of executives recorded in the documents, the number of people with last names from the three families was quite high. Of course, Sonozaki was no exception. However, at the top was the Kinamiyoshi family. The Kinamiyoshi family seemed to be in charge. The rulers behind the scenes were the Sonozaki family. This double-layered structure implicitly told me that this village had both a light and a dark side.
園崎家の頂点は現当主の園崎お涼っていうばあさんです。園崎天皇なんて呼ばれるくらいにその発言には影響力があるそうです。気をつけてくださいよ。大物です。市長だって最敬礼でお迎えするような VIP ですからね。まあひなみ沢と周辺の町に住む村の親族の数千の評伝を固めてるわけですから。
つまりその人物が鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の事実上のトップということですね。
そうなります。
With those words, Oishi pulled out a well-worn cigarette box. Suspected kidnapping of the minister's grandchild and subsequent threats. Were these part of the hidden plot by the Onagafuji Guardians in order to have the Hinamizawa Dam project cancelled?
あなた、東京からはるばる調べにいらしたんですよね。
ええ、そうですか。何か。
じゃあほら、犬飼大臣への直訴事件の絡みですかな。要するに、あれで要注意団体ってことで公安がマークすることになった。
No, we don't need you around here. Wow, lots of them today apparently. Wow. Apologies, did not mean to get raided by a bunch of bots, but okay.
そういう感じですか？
大石さんこそお察しが早くて助かります。
While exhaling out cigarette smoke, Oishi smiled broadly like I'd just pulled a good one on him. Or so I thought. His smile disappeared suddenly.
嘘でしょ。だから直訴事件でマークがついたっての嘘でしょ。
Oishi knew there was no way the Tokyo HQ would dispatch an investigator of something as minor as a direct appeal. If they were to dispatch someone, it had to be for a more dire reason. He had figured out as much. I thought of myself as the type of person who doesn't let things show on their face. In front of his watchful gaze, however, I felt that what I was thinking was completely laid bare. Oishi silently lit another cigarette, as if waiting for me to interject during this awkward pause. I see. So this was a veteran detective's way of getting someone to spill information. But as long as I realized this, there would be nothing more. If I didn't open my mouth, I wouldn't have to lose anything. All I had to do was stare out the window and enjoy the scenery until Oishi gave up.
あなたって人は本当に隠し事が下手な人ですね。そういう素直で初々しいの悪くないな。
Oishi smirked as he twisted out his third cigarette when I tried not to let him notice that I had yielded completely. First I thought I had won, but at the very least Oishi had ascertained that I was hiding something, meaning that I might have ended up marching to his tune. Oishi started up the engine once again and began to move the car.
素直なところを教えてくれりゃもっとお力になれると思ったんですがね。
素直に話したらどう力になれるんです？
内容によりけりですがね、ひなみ沢界隈に詳しい情報屋に引き合わせてあげてもいいですよ。
協力員です。
そっか。あんたらはそう呼ぶんでしたね。
This is a very long first chapter.
どうして私の任務に興味を？大石さん。
そりゃあんたと同じです。常に知るのが私たちの仕事じゃありませんか。
Being able to meet with Luigi's informant was an extremely compelling opportunity. We were looking to recruit somebody familiar with the area to collaborate with for our intelligence. In the end, there was no better method for finding people than asking. We were always taught, however, that the rank-and-file police were no better than monkeys. Unlike us, they were careless with confidential cases. They looked down on them like they'd run their mouth off in a drunken stupor. Luigi was an outlaw even amongst them, and here I was lost on whether or not I should tell him about the kidnapping of the minister's grandson.
その情報協力員はどの程度鬼ヶ淵自主同盟に精通を？
あんたも公安の人間ならわかるでしょう。そんなの私の口からたとえあなたにだって話せるわけないじゃありませんか。
Protect your sources. That was the first principle of dealing with confidential information. In that regard, it seemed that Oishi wasn't one of those monkeys. Should I trust him, ask for his help, or not?
あなたは国、私は金に雇われてますがね。私たちの職務はそう大きくは違わないと思っています。力になれると思うんですがね。
However, I had trouble believing that this crafty old man would simply help me just like he claimed. Now, how should I go about this?
大石さんほどの方が無償で力になってくださるとはちょっと思い難いですが。
そりゃ下心がないわけじゃないです。あんたらは確か協力員に支払える謝礼用の予算を持ってますよね。領収書不要な予算を。そいつでですね、情報屋との接触にかかるコストをちょいと。
つまり情報屋と渡りをつける謝礼をあなたにお支払いしろということですね。取引内容が明快で助かります。
He certainly was something else for being able to brazenly state his ulterior motive like this. Rather than him doing this out of the most kindness of his heart, everything was a lot clearer if he was being compensated for this ideal. felt that he was the type of man who was good at these backroom dealings.
誤解しないでくださいよ。お金が必要なのは私にじゃなくて情報屋になんですからね。まあ支払いの関係上お金は私が預かりますがね。
支払いはいつ？
今すぐがいいですね。ないなら明日でもいいんですよ。
I pulled out a wallet that was different from my personal one. Price was pretty much fixed depending on what kind of information I was paying for. In this case, the payment was up front, and considering the fact I didn't know what kind of info I would get, I shouldn't pay too much. I suggested that Alishi suddenly stretched out his hand and tightly grasped the contents of the wallet.
こういう時はですね、ケチケチしない方がいいんです。大丈夫、大丈夫。損はさせませんから。
わかりました。ケチケチしないことにします。
で、調べたい情報は何です？内容によって多少アプローチが変わることもありますので。
他言無用を誓ってもらえますか、大石さん。
誓うまでもありませんよ。私もあなたたちと同じ。職務上知り得たことは他言できませんからね。わかりましたよ。誓います。ここで聞くことは他言無用です。それにあなたのおかげで溜まってたツケを全部返せるんですからね。私は少なくとも金の絡んだ約束は絶対に違いませんよ。
Aw, thank you, Soda. I actually thanked you for following earlier on the stream, but thank you. I will try my best. I hope you have a good day at work, or try to, I suppose. I was still unsure if I should trust him until the very last moment, but in the end, I broke down. Rishi wasn't the type of guy I could trust 100%, but there was no mistaking he had access to the underground information networks. In order to accomplish my mission swiftly, I needed his cooperation. I sent my resolve.
鬼ヶ淵主導名がある事件に関与しているか否かを調査しています。
Thank you for following. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Kvothi? Or just Vothi?
ある事件？
犬飼建設大臣が何者かに脅迫を受けている可能性があります。
可能性とはまた遠回しな言い方ですね。
大臣の近辺に内通者がいるらしいのです。その内通者によって高度に監視されているらしく、大臣は脅迫初期から屈服している様子です。警察へも我々へも一切通報していません。
なるほど。だから脅迫を受けている可能性という言い方になると。だとすると妙ですね。大臣が誰にも通報しないなら、どうしてあんたらは事件を知ったんです？
If we didn't spy on the minister's private life, we would have never found out.
その説明は私が情報屋に提供する必要がないと思われるので割愛します。
Rishi apparently got on and quietly chuckled when I refused to explain.
なるほど。大臣の近辺にスパイがいるらしいから、公安だけの極秘調査ということになったわけですか。そりゃあ確かに穏便な話じゃないですね。
ことを公にすれば、大臣の政治生命も含め、政変に発展する可能性は極めて高いでしょう。犯人グループの目的がそこにあるならば、有識事態に発展する可能性があります。
政府の列島改造は まあいろいろ方々との衝突も多いらしいですからね。どんなささやかなケチでも一つつけば野党勢力がドット票を伸ばす可能性もあると。
大臣がどのような要求を受けているのかは現在調査中です。ですが脅迫の方法だけはほぼ分かっています。
何です？
大臣の孫の誘拐です。周辺は否定していますが、最後の目撃から見てすでに誘拐後72時間が経過していると思われます。
3日ですか。波の身代金目的ならもう決着してますね。
金銭でなく大臣に何らかの政治的なアクションを要求している可能性が極めて高いでしょう。それを我々は黙認するわけにはいきません。
で、それの犯人グループとの可能性として鬼ヶ淵死守同盟がリストに上がったわけですね。
そうです。
大臣の孫を誘拐してダム計画の撤回を求めるか。
どうでしょう、大石さん。その可能性はあなたから見てあり得ると思いますか？
Rishi seemed to ponder the idea for a while. Second chief at the regional office had responded immediately with, "It's possible." However, Oishi, who was this well informed about the matter, was hemming and hawing. Finally, just a little bit, he said something that was really just a little bit strange.
明治前まではですね、この辺りはひなみ沢村って名前じゃなくて鬼ヶ淵村って呼ばれてたそうです。うちのばあ様の受け売りですがね。
This topic was so completely and suddenly unrelated to the subject of the kidnapping of the minister's grandson that I was taken slightly aback.
鬼ヶ淵村。あ、それで鬼ヶ淵死守同盟という名称になったわけですね。
鬼ヶ淵村ってのはですね、人食い鬼の住む村だと言われてたんだそうです。今でも村人は自分の体に鬼の血が半分流れてると信じてます。
人食い鬼。大石さん、それ何の話ですか？
情報ですよ、情報。さっきあなたからたくさんもらっちゃいましたからね。少しもらいすぎました。その分サービスしてあげてるんですよ。
Rishi finally smiled, but it just seemed like he was fooling around.
先を続けてください。
人食い鬼たちはですね、普段は仙人と崇められてひっそりと暮らしているんですがね、やっぱり人食いですから定期的に麓の村に降りてきては獲物をさらっていったんだそうです。それをですね、鬼隠しと言いまして。
Demoned away. It was the first time I'd heard such a peculiar phrase. However, I felt something slightly ominous from this horrifying tale of demons abducting people in order to eat them.
ほら、よく世間一般に神隠しっていうのがあるじゃないですか。人がある日突然失踪してしまうとそう言うでしょ。この辺りでは同じことがあると鬼隠しって呼ぶんです。
その昔話と本件に何か関係が？
いえいえ、直接的には何の関係もない。ただのおしゃべりですがね。ただ。
The car shook. At some point, the gravel road had changed to a paved one.
ただ、何です？
この土地に鬼隠しという名の失踪、誘拐を暗示するキーワードがある。ということだけはお話ししておこうと思いまして。今回の大臣の孫の誘拐と関係あるかは分かりませんがね。まあ深い話ではないんです。そんな言われの話があるということだけでもね。
Onikakushi. Human-eating demons coming down the foothills and abducting their prey. Then, in order to cancel the dam project that has threatened to submerge the village they lived in, did they demon away the minister's grandson? Then had that already made an example out of the minister's grandson and eaten him alive?
ちょっと興味深い昔話ですね。
鬼たちの村にみだりに踏み入れば たちまち囚われ食い殺される。だから鬼が淵村には近づくな。今時の若者はこんな迷信信じませんがね。沖宮の明治生まれの年寄り連中には今でも真面目に信じてるのが多いですよ。
Hinamizawa village was filled by the people in the area. I recalled the piece of information I heard from the Prefectural Public Safety Division.
何しろこの辺は田舎ですからね。迷信なんかが平気で幅を利かせてるんです。東京から来られた赤坂さんにはちょっと想像もつかないでしょうがね。
The man-eating demons as the price for violating the sanctity of their village, kidnapping the minister's grandson, and swallowed him whole. The ludicrous idea flew through my head. It was so absurd I was half disgusted with myself. Rishi was just teasing me. Stupid. It was all really so stupid. Come to think of it, by then I may have already been seized by the curse of that dubious village. For me to realize that would take a little more time. Hinamizawa has a way of getting to you, man. Even before you really realize it. New tips unlocked. Wow, that was a very long first chapter. Holy crap. What the hell? I wasn't expecting my first thing to be just... my first stream for this chapter to be just one. Like... wow. Okay. So let's read these.
そうですか。急な出張は大変ですね。どうぞお気をつけて。出張はどちらへですか？もう出張先なんですか？
Whenever I headed out on assignment, she would ask where. Not just Yukie, but anybody would have asked the same question. It was a cold place. She would urge me to pack a thick jacket. But as far, she'd warn me to be careful on the drive over. It was just normal everyday concern that led to asking such an obvious thing. I felt sad that I couldn't answer such a run-of-the-mill question.
ごめんなさい。言ってはいけない規則でしたね。どうかお気をつけて。
すまん、ユキエ。
あなたはいつの頃からすぐに謝られるようになったんでしょう。今のお仕事に疲れた最初はあれだけはつらつと充実していらっしゃったのに。
Yukie laughed as though she'd realized something. Times like this, Yukie had the magical power to see right through me.
私が入院してもう随分になりますものね。あなたもそろそろ寂しくなってきましたか？
からかうなよ。寂しがるような年じゃないさ。
さてさていかがでしょう。あなたは本当に甘えん坊さんですからね。私と一緒でないとだんだん弱気になってきてしまうのでしょ。
もう今ユキエの頭に小悪魔の角がにょっきりと生えているのが目に浮かぶよ。君は昔から。
はぐらかさないはぐらかさない。私に構ってもらえなくて寂しい寂しいって。あなたが尻尾を振っている音が受話器を通しても聞こえてきますよ。
Usai Yukie wasn't something you could guess existed from seeing her usual modest behavior, something she didn't show to anybody else but me. Normally I'd poke her to hide my embarrassment bringing end to the conversation, but I couldn't do that over the phone. Of course, Yukie was clever. She was teasing me because of that.
あなたを困らせるのがこんなに楽しいと気づいたのはいつからだったでしょうね。
そろそろ許してくれよ。とにかく君の元気な声が聞けてよかった。
そうでしょう。元気になれましたか？
I'd call Yukie to keep her feeling lonely when she was by herself in the hospital room. Of course, there was nothing more than a pretense that I, being shy, had come up with. It seemed that Yukie had long since seen through the act.
また電話をしてくださいな。私がダメな時はお父さんが相手をしてくれるでしょう。もっともお父さんが相手ではあなたのことだから電話先でも直立不動で喋っていそう。
For a while longer, Yukie kept teasing me without letting me end the call. That's cute. Record of opening remarks. Chairman, members of the party, congratulations are due as we are celebrating 25 years since our founding. These past 25 years has been such much growth in this prefecture. The once quiet scenery of nothing but fields now has seen the opening of a new stop for a bullet train, and with the development of the highway, we've seen the rebirth of a modern city bursting with youthful energy. We've reaped the benefits of new business and industry, and with the special reverence the cities of the prefecture have for time-honored traditions. History and culture, business and industry, with these ideals in harmony, they have accomplished in growing their city into one of Japan's most foremost metropolises. Of course, the developments of the prefecture couldn't have happened without the growth of the party. We are resolved to see every one of our campaign promises to fruition, reaching our targets definitively and expediently like arrows fired from a bow. With these arrows are the fundamental basis of the party, our members have sought to pierce the obstructions preventing the happiness of the residents of the prefecture. But I do believe that everybody here is unlike an ordinary arrow. While being as unfaltering and straightforward, we have not neglected the seeking solutions that conform to the current day and age while also keeping an eye on the future. An arrow, once loosed, can only fly to its destination. Everyone here, however, is no simple arrow. Even once loose from the bow without neglecting our studies, while employing new methods and implementing more effective and flexible ideas, thus being able to change trajectories mid-flight, we are magical arrows. The modern age marches ever forward. Sometimes it marches faster than the time taken from planning to execution. The following part was not in the script. It is thought to have been ad-libbed by the minister. For example, there have been numerous problems with the Hinamizawa power plant project. Rather than forcing through the project solely because it was decided upon the government, it is necessary to reflect upon and adjust to the ever-changing needs of the residents, the region, and the next generation. Protests by the local residents that surround the Hinamizawa Dam, these are also the will of the people of the prefecture. If you feel that there is no need to listen because the projects have already been finalized, then you do nothing more than shed a poor light on Japan's post-war democracy. The following is as per the script. For the lasting happiness of the citizens of Japan and the residents of the prefecture, please consider these policies thoroughly. I believe, however, we have all gained something from the flexibility and foresight of the party. I've taken a bunch of your time. However, allow me to say the following to celebrate the 25th anniversary of our founding. Chairman, members of the party in attendance, thank you very much for today. From the opening remarks of the party prefectural forum and 25th anniversary celebration. Not sure what all that means, but okay. Garrison fire and the taste of honey. I don't like any of that statement. I don't like that music either. Actually, I do like it. It's very good and unsettling, but I don't like that it's unsettling. The world is filled with people blessed with relationships. Of course, that doesn't mean that everyone is connected to each other. It's obvious that on the other side of the planet there are people laughing and crying who can't possibly have an effect on you. However, in the extremely limited community of the neighborhood, that sort of connection is just a matter of fact. It's quite possible that a single remarkable event could have massive consequences inside a small community. If you were to increase that scale, a perfect stranger on the other side of the globe might become enough of a legend to have an effect on our lives. It's not always that way. Like I said at the beginning, the links between people basically aren't that relevant in the grand scheme of things. Whether some household nearby is having steak or croquettes doesn't matter to me. When I put on my shoes, it doesn't matter to anybody whether I put the right one on or the left first. This much the average person can understand, but actually in reality this is the truth. The bonds between people are quite well defined. It's not just a matter of distance or being near or far. For example, let's say that person A's actions have some effect on me. Even then, person B's actions could have absolutely no consequence on my life. The reverse also holds true. Because my actions affect person A, that doesn't always mean they affect person B as well. Let's put it bluntly. The bonds between people are like gears in a machine. The gear that represents me meshes with some people, but is isolated from others. There are some people who would try arguing against this. Those people would bring up the example of gears in a clock. Each gear indeed only directs meshes with one or two others. However, if you rotate one gear, the other one next is moved, which connects to the next one and the next and the next. And in the end, all the gears are moving. There is a logic behind this, more than enough to convince the average person. Why is the argument convincing? The answer is simple. The relationships between people are ambiguous. It can only be described conceptually. How the gears are connected and how their movements are chained together can't be used as a fundamental explanation. Throws a wet blanket on that argument. So for the people who like that explanation, I'll use the example of a clock again to refute it. First of all, to say that this world is a singular clock would be wrong. That is, there isn't only one clock. There exist many clocks in this world, each counting their own time. If you think about it, the idea that this world is just one big clock is the height of arrogance. Even if you use the analogy of gears to explain human relationships, then you should be able to explain it using an analogy of multiple clocks and relating to a single gear. Neighbors A and B. A is a gear on the same clock as me, so it's best to remain civil. B is a gear on a different clock, so he doesn't really matter to me at all. That's the kind of clear distinction I'm talking about. You want to say I'm being fallacious, then let's change the analogy to something more familiar so you can understand. You've probably heard the phrase, a fire on the opposite shore sometime in your life, no? For example, if your neighbor's house was on fire, you'd probably try and help to put it out, wouldn't you? Be awful if the fire spread and burned down your own house, after all. But what if the fire was in a town on the opposite side of a river? Would you still go out of your way to help? You wouldn't, would you? Even though it would be the wrong thing to do, there's no way a fire could spread to your own house. Even if it turned into a huge conflagration, there's no relation between the houses that will spread fires to yours and those that won't. With this basic example, you should be able to see the difference between gears that are and aren't related to your own. Having said that, there's still a lot to think about, even without a river to divide it. After all, it's not a spatial problem like being on the other side of the river, is it? Interesting. The chick in the trunk. Why is there a chick in a trunk? The car had stopped, but he didn't know any more than that. For not only was he blindfolded, but locked in the trunk of the car. How could people become this powerless just by being robbed of their sight? He absolutely wouldn't have known this without experiencing it firsthand. He soon realized it was pointless to try to undo his hands, with the confines of the truck quickly making him lightheaded. He had no choice but to let this mild torture dull his senses. That's why when the car stopped and the unpleasant vibration ceased as the engine was killed, he couldn't help but delude himself that he was being set free, even though nothing had been resolved in reality. Of course, he was soon removed from that delusion. He strained his ears when he heard one of the men who had abducted him and an older man he was hearing for the first time strike up a conversation. Oh, he is the chick. Okay. Not chick as in female, chick as in child. The trunk opened, letting in a blast of fresh, cool air. Even though up until now he had just been thinking about getting out of that stuffy trunk, when it was actually opened, he suddenly became uneasy. Even so, then he wished that the lid of the trunk would again close, separating himself from them. Suddenly, somebody stroked his head. Of course, since he was blindfolded, he couldn't tell if the hand was petting him or simply evaluating how easy it would be to remove his scalp. Unable to tell the difference, he could only freeze as he imagined the worst-case scenario. The older man said that kindly as he gently stroked the boy's head. But hearing nothing but the average standard dialect his whole life, the older man's distinct intonation left a deep impression on the boy. But he had no idea what he was saying. For your gramps to register as meaning your grandfather took a while to process. Eventually the hand that was stroking his head loosened the blindfold. No problem, Fred. I hope you got some good stuff.
気の利かんやっちゃらな。本家にむごい仕打ちは千にやっちゃっとる。そこんとこ肝に刻むんよ。
分かってます。手荒な真似はしませんよ。小僧がおとなしくしててくれる分にはね。
The man's hand prodded roughly and repeatedly at the boy's head. A rugged hand, unlike the affectionate one that had been stroking his head before. Just stay cooperative. If you struggle, there's no guarantee what will happen. That cliched threat was literally beaten into his head. Interesting. You can't function without energy. I mean, that's... I can function without energy drinks, but I cannot function without water, which is true of all humans. Okay, so read all those tips. That's fair. I'm about to end stream anyway, so you may not want to go through the trouble, but if you haven't already, switched me over. But interesting that I went almost 2 hours and I only got through one chapter. That was a long chapter. And I didn't even meet Keiichi or the regular friends. It's just this new guy and Oishi talking about Hinamizawa, which I guess is interesting because you get to see it from their perspective, like from outside Hinamizawa, whereas when you're playing as Keiichi, you see everything from inside. You're like an outsider, but you're inside the town, so it's like a little bit different than what he's going through. Well, if I drink energy drinks, it just makes my heart rate go up too high, and it scares me because I've had, you know, unnaturally high heart rates for a while. So in order to keep my health a little better, I've not been drinking any sort of caffeine, which has, my heart rate has lowered quite a bit, so I guess it's been working. You got forbidden from drinking them. Well, you're going to drink them again, apparently, so you obviously didn't listen to that. But anyways, interesting. Glad to start chapter 4. I will be getting back into this next week, like always. Let's see if I can... Oh! Yes. I am definitely going to be raiding today. We are going to be raiding... I think this is her name. Let me double check. Yes. We're gonna go check out Priscilla. She's fantastic. I'm not a big Minecraft person, but she's playing Minecraft right now, and I just want to support her because she's wonderful and amazing, and I love her. So, thank you all for coming out today. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!